My name is Peggy Boyles. I'm an independent consultant, and I'm from Oklahoma City. And my colleague is Greta Lundgaard, and she is from Plano ISD in Texas. And she and I have worked also with a task force on one of the STARTALK's principles about having learner-centered classrooms. And then this is the workshop that came from that. So basically, the purpose of this session is to identify characteristics of a learner-centered classroom, to provide some examples of strategies used in learner-centered classrooms, to share some sample activities that exhibit elements of learner-centered principles, and to analyze these elements of a lesson to identify which ones are learner-centered. It's a big menu for our time together, but what we're going to be talking about, what are those key characteristics of learner-centered classrooms? And by the way, I recently read an article in the ASCD, the American, I don't even know what ASCD is, but ASCD Journal, and they were talking about the difference between classrooms that have compliant learners and those that have engaged learners. And sometimes with compliant learners, they are doing what we ask them to do, and they are compliant and they're following the rules, but they're not truly engaged in the work that's going on in the classroom. So we want to have engaged learners. And because of that, and there's also a handout on your table that is at a glance, learner-centered classrooms at a glance, which is a course for you to take, and it's also on the STARTALK website, talking about what are those things that make a learner-centered classroom. Well, the teacher acts as a partner in the learning process, not just someone who talks and stands up in front of the class. She's an active partner, gives a learner a voice and choice according to their needs, ages, and abilities, so that it's not everyone, one size does not fit all sometimes, and so you want to have the learner have some choice. The teacher makes instructional decisions based on learner performance and constantly gauging that, and engages learners in cognitively challenging real-world tasks rather than just worksheets and drills, and to actually have them doing things that they can imagine themselves doing in real life. And provides opportunities for input in using language in rich contexts, creates opportunities around topics interesting to the learners, and that of course is very age appropriate, and sets up collaboration among learners while using the language, and allows for ongoing feedback from a variety of sources to improve language performance. Now, as we go through the activities today, you have a handout on your table that is labeled Planning Instruction for the Learner in Mind. This is your handout for the session. And as you will see, the learner-centered classroom characteristics that we just went over on the screen are also on your handout, with a column on the right that asks you to match each activity that we're doing today with one or more of these learner-centered characteristics. So this is for your notes and to have you reflect as we do the activities. And then at the end of a group of activities, we're going to ask some reflective questions of the group of activities. Okay, one of the things we want to do is to have learners working in a variety of settings, and also to not have it always be teacher, student, teacher, student, teacher, student, that kind of ping pong ball kind of delivery, because who's doing most of the talking in that scenario? Teacher, student, teacher, student. It's the teacher. And what we want is that the students to talk and we facilitate. So we want to have activities where we can have students think creatively, personally, and then pair with another person and share their ideas, and then pair again with another two partners to continue that process of communicating student to student to student. So this is one of the strategies that we are going to use. Think, pair, share. It's a cooperative learning strategy that many of you may be familiar with already. What I'd like you to do is to look at this drawing up here on the screen. And as you do that, what do you see? So you don't have to share with anyone yet. This is the think part of the think, pair, share. What is it that you see? In a moment, you will be sharing with a partner. Okay, I want you to turn to someone next to you and tell that person, tell your partner what you see. We are going to be doing rearranging of groups, so don't get too settled where you are, because you are going to be moving. But for now, the person next to you and with the three of you, you can just share amongst the three. Tell each other what you see. Do we have more puzzle people? The thing is, they're never going to get it.
The right part is the mouth, and here is the nose.
Okay, and now your partners, the two of you that talk to one another at your table, tell others at your table. Some of you have an uneven number, but if there's 4 people at your table, the 2 who paired turn to the other 2 and share what you saw. Tell and explain what you saw, and maybe even kind of outline what you saw, because there's usually 2 things that people see. Okay, so go ahead and share with others what you saw and see if you all saw the same thing. Okay, so why don't we have one group, Paul's group? Paul, what did the 2 of you, or everyone at your table, did you all see the same thing? No. Okay, what did 2 of you see? The first partners, what did you and your partner see?
I've seen only old, sad, old lady.
No.
I cannot see young, unfortunately.
Okay, so
Very, very happy.
we see, she saw, and many of you probably did, a sad old lady. Here is her nose. And so, how many of you saw a sad old lady? Raise your hand if you saw a sad old lady. All right, for some of those who did not see a sad old lady, for example, what did you see, sir?
I saw a young lady.
Okay.
Who wants to see young lady?
Okay. So he saw. It's the same picture. He saw a young lady, and that this is her necklace on her neck, and she's turned to the side, and this is her profile and her hat. So it's one of those optical illusions that you can see different things, and through collaboration, by talking to other people, you can see each other's views. And you can also see that this strategy of think, pair, share is much more learner-centered rather than the teacher going around the room individually and saying, what did you see? What did you see? What did you see? I'm the one who's talking most of the time, but with this, it's the students interacting with one another and collaborating and showing and explaining. So think, pair, share is an activity or a strategy that you can have them think, pair, share about any topic. It could be modified for any proficiency level. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is to solve and collaborate and produce a narrative by using a puzzle that we will put together, and you will find people in the room. So in your classroom, you would get from the internet, from your target culture, Chinese art, Turkish art, Arabic art, and then divide them into 4 puzzle pieces and find the different puzzle pieces to complete the puzzle, and then you'll have a task to do once you do that. So,
We need to find them.
all right, so what we're going to do is in a moment we're going to have you all stand up, and you all have one puzzle piece. Your task is to go around, and you could even do this in the target language. But you could just say, I have this puzzle piece. Does it match? And in Spanish, which is my language, I would just say, corresponde este corresponde?
Nein, es geht nicht.
No. Then I have to go to somebody else. Everybody stand up, try to get 4 together, and put it together at a table.
Okay, great.
Sit at a table when you find all 4 pieces and put the 4 pieces on the table. You don't have to be at the same table you started. So when you find your puzzle, like you all did, put it on a table and sit down for the next steps.
We have a next step. Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
Okay, so everyone should be at a table with their puzzle pieces somewhere at a table. Yeah, we need to be at a table over here. Any table. Okay, then maybe just go stand or sit at this table. Yes.
Okay, here's a puzzle. We need people. Yeah.
You're like children.
Yeah, like
Okay.
children.
Everybody is with their people, with their puzzle. Okay, now, when everybody gets somewhere, doesn't matter what table, you'll be moving again, so don't get too settled there either. All right. So now you would need to choose a strategy to begin telling a story based on your painting. Now, our strategy for today, we are just going to say in your group, the person who has the longest hair is going to start the story. So whoever that is, you're it. You're starting the story.
All right.
Okay, have you identified who has the longest hair? Raise your hand if you have the longest hair in your group. Raise your hand. Raise your hand in your group. Longest hair, raise your hand. Everybody has a person. All right, you're going to start the story. You're going to be number 1. All right, that's your role. Now, each person in clockwise order, like going around the clock, is going to add a sentence to a continuous story about the painting. It's completely open-ended, or if you wanted to, you could give some parameters. It could be just a description, using words and phrases for novices. It could be short sentences if you're at the intermediate level. Advanced could do paragraph length as you go around. But for time purposes, let's just do very simple sentence, 1 or 2 sentences. The person with the longest hair starts the story, go clockwise. Everybody adds until it gets back to the beginning person. So there'll be 4 sentences or 4 chunks. Everybody understand what we're doing? Raise your hand if you understand the instructions. Okay, yes? Understand the instructions? Okay, person with the longest hair, start the story, and then you'll go around and everybody's going to contribute 1 or 2 sentences. Go.
这是一张画。
Okay, so can we stop at this point? I know you probably haven't finished your story, but for the sake of time, let's go ahead and stop. Okay. If everyone can put their puzzle pieces in the Ziploc bags on the table, then we can use them again tomorrow.
Now, don't move. You're staying in this group for the next activity. So put your pieces in the baggie, but please don't move. If you can.
Yeah, for now. Okay, so. Okay, we need to stop the story. I know they're wonderful stories, but you see how this is learner-centered? It is not about me and you listening to me. It's all about the learners. The learners are engaged. You didn't want to stop telling your story or sharing. The speaking was going on out there. It wasn't me doing all of the talking. The other thing I like about this for novices, for beginning, a lot of STARTALK programs are beginning programs, is to me, a novice would not be able to cannot tell a story, a narrative based on one visual. But this is shared risk. You've got 4 people who are going to contribute, depending on their proficiency level, a word, a phrase, possibly a short basic sentence, but they're not being asked to create like an intermediate would, to create a story, several connected sentences together. So you can do these things, activities, and have it be engaging, even though they're at a very beginning level, and then you just up the game. You can have them narrate in the past. You can have them, use words or phrases, like I say, in the present tense. You can concoct it the way you want, but the important thing is that if the learners are engaged and you are a coach and you're going around facilitating, with the caveat that you have to model to be sure they know what they're supposed to do. Okay. Now, we are not going to do this step in the interest of time, but after they create their story and possibly go around their circle more than once, then their group could share with, you two groups could share with each other about your painting and about your story. So you get a lot of mileage out of cutting up a puzzle into 4 pieces, and look all you can do with communication and have it be interactive. So but before we go on to the next activity, I'm just reminding you of your handout where you are putting what principle you think these activities are. We've had activity 1 with Thinkpairshare. We've had the round robin. And so because we want to think as a student, from a student perspective, thinking about Thinkpairshare, how does that encourage collaboration? And how did this strategy give students multiple opportunities to express their ideas? So just at your table, just kind of lean in and share what your thoughts are about this from the student perspective.
And you have room on your handout if you want to jot down some ideas. Okay, you might want to grab your handout.
Okay, so let's do it from the student perspective first. Just share your thoughts at your table. How would you respond to this reflective question? These are based on the Thinkpairshare, the art puzzles of actually putting them together, and the round robin of creating the story is what they call that, shifting around. All right. Okay, so before we go on to the next reflective question, could somebody share a thought or two based on how this gives students opportunities and collaboration time? Is anyone willing to? Yes.
Even if I'm a student, it's such a fun activity. You're not really realize that you're learning something. It's fun, and because you're in a group, everybody gets a sentence, and we just talked about it, and you just want to follow up what the previous sentence was, and sometimes you become very creative because your friend tells a sentence, you want to make something related, and it becomes very interesting story, and if you want to keep going, you don't want to stop it.
Right.
It's very interesting. It's a very exciting story.
And that's the good thing. They want to keep going. They don't want to stop. I mean, that's probably a really good hallmark if it's a learner and centered activity. Plus, you mentioned it also causes you to listen to one another and listen to the previous sentence. Anyone else? Let's do one more over here.
Novice, I believe it will be great if somebody will start, because they do not know too many words, but they can say, this is a card, for example, and second one must repeat first phrase and add something else.
That's a variation.
Later, more.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Those high frequency chunks that novices have, like there is, there are, there is, there are. You can use that until the cows come home, and then, you can, that's a very Oklahoma phrase. And then, okay, one more, and then we're going to move to the teacher.
I believe that it's very consolidated, very engaging activity, because people are going around, they know each other, they learn about each other, they introduce each other, and sometimes people are very separated in the class. And this is absolutely great to put them together.
Right. Good. Success. All right, let's look on the teacher side, what type of questions or prompts are most appropriate for round robin activities? Our round robin was the painting, and everybody added a sentence to describe the painting. But of course, there are many things that you could collaborate by going around and each adding a piece to something other than a painting. And how did the art puzzles encourage students to make choices and create their own learning experience? So from a teacher's perspective, what would you say to either or both of these questions? So why don't you buzz about that a little bit?
Yeah, this can be sort of leveled and it
Okay,
helps them.
I have to stop you because Greta and I are both watching time very carefully. So you do have your handouts to put your reflections to these questions. You also can record them there, but we want to move on to the next activity, which Greta is going to be leading us in.
Okay, we're going to shift gears just a little bit. I hope you saw that these first two activities that we did can be adjusted for novice learners, even novice mid to low learners who just know words, but it could also be scaffolded up to higher level proficiency students. We're going to look at an activity now that probably tends to be more novice, high, intermediate. This is also something that heritage students can really work with no matter what their level is, and this is called a jigsaw reading activity. And I hope I clicked the right thing. Okay, so how we're going to do this, and notice this is activity number 3. Learners are cognitively engaged in the learning process. And this is real important because we want them to have fun, right? And one of you mentioned that this was a kind of a fun activity. But if it's not cognitively engaging, if their brains are not working, and if the activity does not lead to language development, then it's fun for no purpose. You know, it's like Battleship, playing Battleship with numbers. Okay, fun, but not really cognitively engaging. And so that is the task, that's the key, is to try to engage students in an entertainment way, but a way that also gives them cognitive development. So we're going to walk through how to do a jigsaw reading. So if you find on your table, you'll see there's a text. Okay, this is a text, and again, we're going to put you in the position, and you might grab some from other tables. Stay with your same group. And our whole goal when we do student-centered activities is for the students to do all the work, remember? So we're going to let you do all the work. And if you notice on the reading activity, we have little men, okay? I have done this ahead of time. So this would be something that I as teacher would do ahead of time. I take a text that I feel is appropriate proficiency level, and I've divided it into chunks. And because I'm thinking of all types of learners, I've used visual aids to help you see what the chunks are. Does everybody see the little men? And so that's what the chunks are. So I've divided the text up. Now I'm going to divide my students up. And there's a variety of ways that can be done, but guess which way I have chosen. If you find somewhere on your table, you'll see some cards with little colored men on it. Everybody take one. And that is going to be the text that you go ahead and take your little man. You have a red man, an orange man, a green man, or a blue man. And Peggy's there with some extras if you need it. Everybody gets one and they're all the same. No. All get red. All get the same color at your table. Okay. So everybody with one hand hold up your little man. Everybody hold up your little man. And everybody at your table should have the same color. Okay, is that good? All right, put your little man down. Now this is what a jigsaw reading is all about. So, if you have the red man, guess what part of the text that you're going to read? The red man. If you have the green man, which part are you going to read? The green man. So you're only reading one section of the reading. Now go find your handout. Everybody see your handout? Yes. Do you see your little man? Do you see your little man? And so your task number 1, and this is a way for students to handle text, a way to make text accessible to students in a very non-threatening, non-stressful way. So if you have the blue man, your table is going to read the blue man section, and then after you have read it, you're going to jot down in your organizer the important points from that section. So you're only going to fill in one square on your graphic organizer. Now, you're probably got your teacher brain on and you know what comes next, but let's not do that. So we're going to give you 3 minutes to read silently. Everyone reads, and then you're going to have 3 minutes to agree with your group. What's the most important thing in this section? And you're going to write it down on your table where it says Jigsaw Reading next to your colored man. Does everybody understand? Okay, everybody put your hand on your head if you understand. Check for comprehension, right? Everybody understand? Okay, that's where, oh, I'm so sorry. Well, it's not in color. We didn't tell them to do it in color. Okay, so the blue man. Oh, you can understand by the pose. Thank you so much. Match your pose. Thank you. Red is the little different. Oh, red's at the bottom.
I would just put red, green, blue,
Yeah.
orange in your square so you know.
In my classroom, I would make sure this was in color so you could see. All right, 3 minutes. Read, talk with your group about what you think your section means, and jot it down.
That's right.
Okay. I know you're probably not done with your conversation, but again, we're modeling these for you. So now, those of you have probably already figured out this cannot be the end of this activity. Obviously not. So now, because remember, and were you cognitively engaged because your handout was not in color, so you're trying to figure out which little man is you, right? So now what we are going to do is we're going to form temporary groups, and we call these expert groups by having one student from each home group join other students assigned to different home groups. So basically what that means, and don't move yet because Peggy and I are going to model this for you. Now, instead of one group where everybody is the blue man, we're going to have another group, and what color men are in this new group? One from each one. So one red, one blue, one green, one orange. Now, this is another opportunity because your students, think about your students, if they're reading the text in the target language, when they talk about what it means, what language are they probably in? Probably in English, depending. And you may say, write your notes in the target language, help one another do that. But now another opportunity to get them back in the target language, because when they get up and find groups, Peggy, how might we do this?
Okay, I am green. I am a green. What color are you?
Ich bin rot.
¿Y dónde está azul? ¿Dónde está azul?
Yeah.
¿Y dónde está anaranjado? Anaranjado, el otro color.
Sehr
Hay
gut.
4. Este es un grupo.
Un grupo, okay, yeah, eine Gruppe. Okay, so does everybody understand? So now this is your temporary group, because what you're going to do now is you're going to explain your section to now your new group. So I only had to read one section, but I'm still going to get the information about all the other groups. And so that's next step. Okay, does everybody understand your next task? Okay, stand up, take your little man and your papers, and find your new group. Find your new group.
Mental, physical,
Okay, my students, I'm going to have to stop you again. I know you're not completed this task, but we need to go on, and this is not it, right? We're not done yet with this activity, because now I have to hold you accountable for what you read. So if this were my class, of course, obviously I'd give you time to have read all the sections. Everybody would be able to talk. So now we're going to do we're going to do something called numbered heads together. So this is how I'm going to hold you accountable for what you just read and what you just did, because it can't be just fun. It's got to be fun and cognitively engaging. So very quickly in your group, I want one person from each group just to raise your hand. One person, raise your hand from each group. Someone decide who you are. One person from each group, raise your hand. Paul's group is slow. Okay. Now you are number one. Whoever raised their hand, you are number one, and start with that number one person and just count off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Count off. I'm 1. Everybody take a number. Okay, and now I always tell my students, write down your number, because I'm the person who says 3 and totally forgets that I was number 3. Okay, so now That's okay. We don't have time. If we were going to do this in real life, I'd make sure everybody had the same number of people. So now I'm going to hold you accountable. So I've got you in groups. Each person has a number, and I'm going to pose a question. I'm going to pose a question based on the reading, and then y'all put your heads together and come up with the answer. And what I'm going to do next, I'm just going to call out a number. And the number of that person in your group has to give the answer. You don't know who that person's going to be yet. Okay? So let's do a model. So I'm going to call out a number, and that person has to give the answer for the table. So here's our question. So I'm going to show the question on the PowerPoint. Y'all get together and see what you think the answer is based on the reading. And then you don't know who I'm going to ask to answer. Everybody ready? Here's question 1. How can teachers make a new concept easier to grasp? How can teachers make a new concept easier to grasp? Talk together. According to the text, what would be a good answer? Everybody needs to know the answer in your group. When you think your group has an answer, put your hand on your head. When you think your group has an answer, put your hand on your head. You have 15 seconds to come up with an answer. 15 seconds. 14, 13. Okay, y'all pick an answer. Pick an answer. Everybody have an answer in your group? Okay, now what I would do is I love the number 2. So if you're number 2 in your group, stand up. Number 2, stand up. Number 2, stand up. Number 2, stand up. Now, as teacher now, everybody knows number 2 has to give the answer, so I just choose a group and I choose you. How can teachers make a new concept easier to grasp?
First, just you can connecting the concept with the real world, and their personal experience to help them to know more about it.
Perfect, perfect. And I'm going to stop you there and I'll say this group, number 2, what's your answer? Using visuals. Sit down. Yay, very, very good. So do you see how this works? In a real classroom, I would make sure to say 1, 2, 3, 4 to make sure everybody, but how am I scaffolding this? How am I supporting my learner? What are we doing? Do they have to figure out the answer by themselves? No. So let's debrief just a minute because this is such an important thing. How many times have you as the learner looked at the text? How many times did you look at this text? How many times? At least 3 times. At least 3 times. This is good repetition. This is the best kind of repetition because the first time you read it with your Blue Man group and y'all all made sure you understood it and then you wrote stuff down again, so you may have even looked at your text 2 times the first time. Then we put you in an expert group with a red man, blue man, green man, orange man, and you had to look at your text again, so maybe that's 3 times, maybe 4 times. Then I asked a question, and notice, did I start with a question in the red zone? Of course not. Now for novices, maybe I would ask my questions in order. That would be a little easier. Y'all are my intermediate group. So I'm just going to ask a question from anywhere. So everybody had to look at the text again, didn't they? To find the answer. So maybe you've looked at this 4 or 5 times before I'm done. And if this text connects with my topic of the day, you've picked up vocabulary, you've seen language in whole language, in sentences, not word level. Do you see how cool this is and how it could work? What could I do to make this jigsaw work for novices? What would novices need? A couple of things novices might need to make this an activity they could do. Greg?
Yeah, I think that the paragraphs may be too much for a novice. 1 or 2 sentences.
Exactly. Shorten the paragraph. What else might I do?
You might have the section very strongly differentiated by topic, and then a few vocabulary words that you know that they know in each one. They identify those, and that can help them understand what that means.
I'm going to make sure and recycle words they already know. What else might I do? Oh man, I might have a picture that goes with each that's going to give you clues. So I can adapt this for novices. Now, if I was going to do this activity, would I do it at the beginning of my lesson cycle? Where would I do this? Where would be the most at the end? Most appropriate at the end, because now they have confidence. And think of it as a learner. How confident are they going to feel after they were able to do this? Very confident that I can read this in the target language, whatever that language might be. So where we put these activities in the lesson cycle, in our sequence, is also very important. Okay, thank you very much for playing along. And the next thing, these are the reflection questions, and we don't have time to go over them. You will have this PowerPoint. It's available for download for you. But these are great things from the student perspective. I'm going to feel very accomplished by the time I can do this, but I was never alone, was I? Never alone. And from the teacher perspective, it's important that I select the right text. It's important that I chunk it well. It's important that I make sure it fits their proficiency level. And then I could use this numbered heads for a lot of different things, couldn't I? Greg?
Just a quick cultural question. It seems to me that there are certain words in there that are very American-centric, US-centric. So it would work if you were teaching English. For example, jigsaw activity, numbered heads. If you're teaching a foreign language, you might want to be careful in the kinds of culturally weighted words that you use. Some countries, they don't number heads, they number noses. And that sort of thing. So you want to be careful. You're talking to Americans.
Yes. Yeah.
English speakers.
That is a very, very good point. Another way to bring in cultural knowledge and cultural perspectives. Thank you. That's a very good point. Okay. Is it Miss Peggy is next?
Yeah, and I really do think, and all of these structures, I just love that, numbered noses instead of numbered heads. And, you know, all of these are cooperative learning structures that Spencer Kagan developed, and those were the names that he gave those, what he calls structures, like numbered heads, but making it culturally appropriate would be so much better. Okay, what we're going to try to do in this one, the concept of having learners encourage them to use their own personal vocabulary when they're interacting, that it's not a planned dialogue, I say this, then you say this. It's more of has a little leeway. So what we're going to do is, in a moment, there's going to be music. Actually, I got this. This is Turkish music and a very popular current singer right now. So that's what we're going to have in the background. When the music is playing, you are going to be mixing around and walking around. And while you are doing that, you are going to be asking someone when their birthday is, and then what month, and in this particular example. And then when you find somebody, you will lock arms and go forward. So for example, if I said, my birthday is in October, when is your birthday? September. Okay. My birthday is in October, when is your birthday?
Ich habe im Oktober Geburtstag.
Okay.
Oh.
Mi pareja, okay, Octubre.
Mein Partner, yeah?
So then what we would do is walk around, the two of us, because we have found a partner, our personalized vocabulary of our month. And then a September person would be looking for another September person, finding that, and then we will have another prompt. So let's go ahead, and I will play music in the background while you exchange personal information. My birthday is in such and such a month. When is yours? Try to find somebody who has the same month. Okay, so I'll start the music first. I'll do it at the end. Everybody stand up. Okay, now we did not wait until every person had a partner. We might want... The first question is going to be something that would be personalized. It certainly doesn't have to be... Are you with me? It certainly doesn't have to be when is your birthday month. It could be what's your favorite day of the week. Thinking of novice kinds of vocabulary, what's your favorite day of the week? What's your favorite holiday, maybe in the target language, is target culture. And then when you have a partner, then those partners would look for two others based on another question. So it's this constantly moving around, talking, and using very simple vocabulary. Now, of course, you could do the same thing, eliciting much more of a detailed response simply by saying, what's your favorite season of the year is a very novice-like prompt. But if you said, what's your favorite season in the year, and how could you make it more advanced, more intermediate? What's your favorite season of the year, and why do you like that season? What's your favorite season in the year, and what do you like to do during that season? So this mixed pair share is not just for, not just for novice activities. Okay. Okay, let's go on back to your table or someplace you have sat sometime during this hour. The October thing. No, it's on the thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now in your groups of 4, what we would normally do is cut this out in sentence strips, but bringing these from Oklahoma and Texas in sentence strips might have been a nightmare. So they are on your handout. On the back of your handout, they are not cut up into strips, but they are on the back of your handout.
It's like this one.
Okay, so working collaboratively, 2 and 2 on your tables, or if you have 3 right now, that's fine. We just want to work collaboratively, and you're going to categorize each of those sentences as either being teacher-centered or student-centered. So, for example, on the back, if you say, the first one, learners act out a conversation written by teacher or found in a textbook. You and your table are going to collaborate to decide, is that a teacher-centered or a learner-centered activity? And you'll just put TC for teacher-centered and LC for learner-centered. And working collaboratively and be ready to explain why you chose it as being teacher-centered or learner-centered. So go through those 6 statements and categorize them as either learner-centered or teacher-centered. Okay, you can go ahead and start.
Right.
Okay, we're going to stop at this point. Now, the students have had a chance to collaborate on a concept that you're categorizing. In this case, it's learner-centered or teacher-centered, but you could see that you could put multiple topics here. You've decided as a group, you've collaborated. Now we want to share out, but do it in a way so the teacher is getting feedback immediately as to how students are reacting to the prompt. So what I would like you to do, you have colored strips on your table. Okay. We have the red one you are going to hold up. There's probably 2 sets, so if there's 4 people, you could do 1 set for 2 people, another set for the other 2, or if there's 3, you could just do 1 set for the table. Thank you. All right, so when we go through these really quickly, if you think the one being red is teacher-centered, I want you to put your card high to vote that that's teacher-centered. And you have to model this for kids, because when I was in the classroom, they would be kind of doing stuff like this. They weren't really sure, so you want to do this. If you think it's learner-centered, hold up your green card. And the kids know that, that they will possibly have to defend their statement. And if you're just really not sure, you hold up your yellow card. So there's 3 options. Okay, so what's the teacher card? Hold up the teacher vote. Okay, hold up the Okay, and then that yellow, I don't know. Yes, Greg, did you have a comment? If, could be what?
Partially both.
Oh, well, that's another way. Exactly. As long, that you have three possibilities for responses. So if you think it could be possibly there are elements of both, teacher and learner, if you think it's like even, then that's another thing you could do. But for our purposes today, we're going to be just, again, you decide what the colors mean. All right, for the first one, learners act out a conversation written by the teacher or found in a textbook. Raise whether, okay, most people teacher-centered. Okay, could I have one person just really quickly, you perhaps in the lovely purple skirt, could you tell us why you said teacher-centered?
Said teacher-centered because all of the ideas are coming from the teacher. There's no conceptual aspect.
Right, okay. It's very static. Okay, the next one. Learners choose a picture that illustrates their personal hobby and label it with a word or phrase in the target language. Okay, so everybody agrees. So we probably don't even need to have the feedback because it's a picture they chose and they're choosing the word. They're not just getting it from a word bank. Okay, the next one. Learners collaborate to decide on a must-see place in their community. They would take a student from the target culture and what they do while they were there, what they would do. Okay, everybody's there because again, it's personal choice. It's not an assigned place in the community that you must talk about. They're having a choice and also the activities they want to describe. All right, learners repeat target vocabulary after teacher presents new words using flashcards or PowerPoint slides. Everybody have a vote? Okay, so using flashcards or PowerPoint to repeat target vocabulary. Can somebody at the back table say why that is teacher-centered? Anybody at the back? Because all of you voted red.
Yeah. Because teacher presented this to the
Teacher
students,
presents,
of course.
and the student can really zone out.
No,
they
work with
and
the
not
teacher,
even,
but this is not the idea. It's teacher's task.
Exactly.
Who chose all the words on the PowerPoint?
Right.
The teacher chose all the words on the PowerPoint.
And the students are just repeating and they're not really engaging with the words. Okay, then the next one. Learners, yes.
Even though teacher is presenting new words and ideas, that is important. That's where you start in the class, right? Mm-hmm. So
But
it's not necessarily a bad thing.
no, it's just that and of course this workshop is not about comprehensible input and variety of ways to introduce new vocabulary, but doing flashcards and repeating is not the most engaging way, but you're absolutely right. You have to input new vocabulary, and there are a variety of ways. In fact, I think there's even a session here on comprehensible input, yes? Right next door. So it will be repeated again tomorrow, I'm sure. So, yes, and that's a good point. You have to input the vocabulary, but there are better ways and not so wonderful ways of doing that. And then and learners exchange postcards they have written about a family trip. Okay, we've got a lot of different things: yellow, red, green. Paul, I'll just call on you. Chose green. Why would you say green?
Karen and I together decided that a lot of the control is for the learner. It's about their family trip. One of our filters was, is there one right answer or multiple possible products being produced? Mm-hmm. All of those we said lent it to be learner-centered.
Okay.
This is a good example of the teacher giving a prompt or a task because she has an end goal in mind, but then the students are able to choose within that task how they're going to give you evidence that they can do the task. We are the teachers. We have a goal in mind, but giving them as much choice as possible in how they're going to show us that they can do that task is our goal.
So trying to make it open-ended so it can be personalized is, yes?
How does the PowerPoint?
but then we are all more careful. And we come with such conclusion. First, about a family trip, their own family trip.
Yes.
Or family trip that prepared by teacher. Then who wrote these postcards? Teacher or student? If it is teacher.
And I can see why the wording of it, learners exchange postcards about their own family trips. If that had been added, then it would have been crystal clear that it was learners. So that's the prompt that was up. That's on us. We didn't do the prompt clearly enough. Okay, and then the last one, learners give each other suggestions on how to improve or make their postcards more interesting that they wrote about their own family trip. Okay. And so that's the kind of thing when you're doing lesson plannings in your programs, is to be consciously aware, is this more teacher-centered or is this more learner-centered, and trying to load up, because now everyone's using the same lesson template, the STARTALK lesson template. And so to load up that learning episode with a lot of learner-centered activities. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about what STARTALK has prepared that's going to help us with a learner-centered classroom. Also on your tables, you will find this, what they call a one-pager, even though it's a two-pager. This is in your program guide in color. This is also on the STARTALK website. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about this center box here. This is a great document. Those of you that are planning professional development for teachers of your student programs, this would be a really wonderful thing to access, to use. They're here. If everybody needs some extra copies, we have some. And they are in color in your program guide. They're beautiful. And if you have a teacher program, this might be something for you to consider adding into your syllabus, is really talking about student-centered or learner-centered instruction. STARTALK has worked a lot on providing support materials for this. So we're going to show just a small clip of a longer video around this topic that STARTALK has prepared for you to use, again, either with professional development of the teachers of your student program, because this is one of the STARTALK principles, right? Learner-centered instruction, or with your teacher.
And this will be available after the conference on the STARTALK website. So it's about, having the student take more responsibility for their learning as they progress.
The learning cycle begins as teachers provide rich input from a real-life context. They explain using visuals, gestures, and demonstrations, and check often to see that the learner understands the message. In the I do phase of the lesson, the teacher models what he or she expects the learner to do. A teacher may act out what the student needs to do to complete an activity, or may demonstrate a conversation that students will have by role-playing that conversation with a student. Learners move gradually from input to output as the teacher engages them in activities where they use language in meaningful ways. The teacher becomes the coach and is in a support role. This is also known as the we do part of the learning cycle. Learners engage in pair and small group activities, allowing them to practice and recycle new learning while engaging in different activities with different partners. It is important to remain in the we do cycle until the teacher has evidence that the majority of learners are prepared to accomplish tasks independently. In the final stage of the learning cycle, students apply what they have learned, and the teacher is primarily available to monitor and provide feedback. The you do phase of the cycle allows learners to work independently to demonstrate the progress that they are making toward meeting learning goals. The STARTALK at a glance on facilitating a learner-centered classroom shows how responsibility for learning shifts from the teacher to the student. Veteran teacher Sandra Tung shares her thinking about the lesson planning process.
When I start to do my lesson plan, I'm thinking how these vocabulary words related to the students, why they need to learn these vocabulary words. So we need to make it meaningful for them. They don't just learn the vocabulary words. They need to use the vocabulary words in sentences.
Okay, so if you could take a look on your at a glance document that has, let me move this off of here, that that has this graphic for gradual release of whether the teacher-centered at the providing input and modeling, and then moving on across. Just take a look at that, and how do you interpret that for your teaching, or with teachers, or in the summer camps? What does this mean to you in terms of how it impacts instruction, this release of responsibility from teacher to student, and how it reads?
Oh, no, I guess it doesn't.
Okay, and again, all of this material is going to be on the STARTALK Central website. What we'd like you to do in closing is at your table, to think about these two questions in terms about setting goals for learning in your summer programs this summer. First of all, as a group, maybe share what goal will you set to incorporate learner-centered strategies in your summer program. So you'll share with other people at your table how you can see incorporating what we've been doing this morning, and what steps will you implement to reach your goal between now and the beginning of your program. So if you could share at your table, I know some of you are in the same programs at your tables, but then you could be talking about what you together think might be some good ideas. And then we're going to ask some of you to share with the group, because they will get ideas from you, I'm sure. So we're going to give you about 5 minutes to share your responses to these questions.
For longer time. So
Okay, so one of the best things about coming to this spring STARTALK conference is being able to share and collaborate with other people who are doing similar programs, teacher programs, student programs, because you really do learn from each other. I always learn from the people I'm around. So is there anyone at any table that at this point would be willing to share from their program perspective what they have a goal for using more learner-centered, and how they think the steps they will take to go about getting there by the onset of their program? Yes.
Thank you so much for delivering such an engaging, interactive workshop today. I came here to gather ideas and samples for novice level and novice lit class. Our on-site visitors have been visiting our program 7 years. We're entering 8th year for combination program teacher and students. And the central target, the central area that we want to focus on, particularly for our program, I don't know, perhaps other programs have their different goals to achieve this year, is to create learner-centered classroom. And we did it, and we made effort. But again, like the majority of teachers and program leaders and on-site leaders said that to create a learner-centered classroom for 0 true beginners might be more challenging than an intermediate or advanced level class.
So your steps will be between now and your program is to incorporate some of these structures for beginning novice learners. That'll be where you'll start.
As I mentioned, perhaps the majority of the activities that we demoed today are good for novice learners. And reading Jigsaw maybe not good for novice. Perhaps it's good for novice high and up.
Okay, so one program is going to focus on learning, trying to incorporate learner-centered for the beginning learners, and they have some steps to take because they have some templates they could use. Anyone else have a goal and how they will go about doing that between now and the onset of their program to make their program more learner-centered? Yes, in the back.
This isn't actually what I said to my group, but I was thinking about it as we were talking just now, is that I feel like you modeled very well using these concepts to teach us what you came here to teach. And so I was thinking about we have a short teacher training before the start of our program every year, and how to implement our conversations about teacher-centered classrooms by using a teacher-centered classroom. So sort of preparing our teacher training to be more learner-centered in order to model that.
Great. And then again, on the back of that at-a-glance document, there are other examples from other programs around the country. The one that says at-a-glance, on the back of it, there are other examples from programs around the country last summer. Anyone else want to make we have about 5 minutes left for either your input, or if you have a question for the group or for me and Greta, either one. Does anybody else, would you like to share your steps?
I just want to say that when I taught this, I teach Persian, and then I had a hard time to find authentic material, authentic activities. But today it's just kind of, you're just kind of realizing that you don't have to go find something extraordinary, even like simple things like a puzzle or like storytelling. You can just kind of take sometimes we take it for granted, all these activities, but you can do so many things. You can just kind of modify the same activities for different levels. And I think the main thing I got a lot of things, but one is like coming up with different activities and being creative. And just kind of saying that, what level is your students and what makes them more interested in, and just use it. And just kind of recycle it in different ways so that they can practice it, they can learn better. So activities and having variety. And in the textbook, like that, students are engaged differently. And that's very important, that to have like visuals, to have like something in writing, to make sure that, everybody, we just kind of, providing students with different materials and different activities.
And I think that's really important too, what you said about, because many programs have multiple levels. They'll have a novice, low, mid, and then they'll have a novice, high, intermediate, low. And so they have two distinct, classes. However, on something like the materials, like art from the culture that you cut up into a jigsaw puzzle, those can be used in both of those levels of proficiency. It's the task that is going to be different. Rather than words and phrases to describe, you're actually going to start creating sentence length utterances about the picture. So good, yeah. There are so many simple things you can do to integrate that and to use the multiple levels. Anyone else has any comments or questions? Yes.
And this fourth year, as we have already a teachers program, and during these years we have around 60 participants, and we keep them everybody in file, and we invite them to work with us. So teachers program has not only different levels, material for different levels for preparation for students, but also two different levels of teachers. First are new, and second are returning to our program. And we make returning teachers work with new ones. So, because from their point of view, they were learners and now they are teachers. So, such way we are trying to keep it really learner-centered strategies. And we have, it's hard to say only one goal, three. It is methods, distance learning, and technology. So they create everybody together under our control for different levels learning objects that we have in open site and everybody can use. It's for Russian, but you can see what we've done during these 4 years, and it's really very, very nice work, learner-centered materials that helps teachers just to grab and use in class.
Well, we appreciate you starting the STARTALK conference with us. So thank you for coming. Greta and I enjoyed having you and working with you. So enjoy the conference.